Hello and welcome back, and today I want to finish looking at the Linksys Velop system and how it compares with the Synology mesh system. That is the RT2600 and those two MR2200ACs. Mesh has become incredibly popular, and I'll be honest, during the course of this comparison, most of the references I'm going to make to this are in my previous content where I showed you the operating systems, the utility, the speed difference of both of these devices in the last week or so. So I strongly recommend that you check out those videos first, because a lot of the details on this information, on this video, you're going to take at faith, when it would be better if you saw those videos first. But nevertheless, let's push on through it. Straight away with the conclusion, I know a lot of you are going to go, oh, well, that's a shock. Right away, I will tell you that I think the Synology is the better device. I will explain why, but for you guys out there that don't have an enormous attention span, I thought I'd just tell you straight off the bat. My reasons for this are as follows. Well, both of them are great mesh systems. There's no denying it in terms of mesh connectivity, and I'm going to have Google Wi-Fi in here in the next few days to compare them against. The Linksys Wi-Fi mesh system is good. I'm not disputing that, and for the price, it's excellent. All three of these pods that come in this pack that you buy, this retails for £300 in the UK. So that's 300 nicker for those, and that's including tax. So it's just that, and you're done. You can't really connect it to your existing router from your ISP, your internet service provider, without a bunch of complications. So it's kind of designed to take over and be your main router to a point. And that's kind of its biggest downside in the grand scheme of things, which I'll explain more later on. Whereas the Synology mesh system is significantly more expensive. Let's get that straight away. If budget is a concern, you are not going to like this, because these three together in this pack here cost £300. The RT2600 mesh router and the MR2200s connected in, if you add those together in that mesh system, is £450. That is 50% more expensive than the Linksys. So I know right now that is going to put a lot of you guys off. Now there are ways around that, it has to be said. First and foremost, you don't need to have the RT2600. You can get away with 3 of these. If you have 3 of these instead of 3 of these, then your overall spend is still going to be £375, but it's still a bit cheaper. But in my opinion, if you're going to use the Synology mesh system, you definitely need to pair them with an RT2600. And again, I'll explain why later in the video. So in terms of price, if that really is your defining choice point, the most important thing for your mesh network, and you know your budget is already stretched pretty thin, then you're going to be very attracted to this Linksys. It's one of the main reasons a lot of people have gone for it, because of what you're getting for your money is fantastic. But after that, things do start to go downhill the tiniest bit. In terms of hardware inside, these have all got a quad-core Qualcomm processor inside to handle that network traffic at 733 megahertz per core. Now the RT2600 has a dual-core 1.7 more powerful and efficient CPU inside there. Still Qualcomm, but if I could pronounce that right, but nevertheless that device has got a dual-core. These have got a quad-core Qualcomm, an almost identical processor as these. Likewise, this has more memory as well. It's got half a gig of memory per unit. These have only got 256. So technically in the hardware department, there are ways in which the Synology setup may seem a bit lacking for you. But to be perfectly honest, these devices are never going to use all that hardware. And the way you utilize them, you're not really going to get that spec out of this. That's mainly for stability purposes, which is good. But that isn't to say that you're probably going to use it all. But in other ways, in terms of hardware, things are very disappointing from the Linksys device. Now, I've already showed you this in the unboxing videos, but if we look at the bottom of that device, if you can see that on camera, we have got 2 LAN ports, power, a reset, and an on-off switch. That's your lot. There's ventilation inside to keep the device cool, but there's your connectivity. Now, in the Synology system, you have way more, pretty much across the entire field. If we go for one of the lesser units, this has got a couple of LAN as well. Let's remove that, we won't need that anymore. We have got the 2 LAN ports there on the rear, but we've also got a USB port and a WPS port. So, and of course, the power button as well. Now the WPS port is for synchronizing devices much easier with network keys, and it's a way of kind of sidestepping authentication, because a lot of devices, again, such as Amazon Alexa, such as Google Home, such as a lot of modern devices, don't actually have a user interface per se, or you need to log into the device to get to that user interface. So if you can't get into the device, you can't get into the user interface so you can get into the device, and there's this constant problem. So WPS is the system of getting two devices, much like Bluetooth synchronization, to take care of the security on a touch button level. Then you can get into them. The fact that these don't arrive with that is bloody disappointing for a mesh system. On top of that, if we move over to the main unit, we can see straight away those 4 aerials. Now the 4 aerials mean 2 things. One, greater degree of coverage. The Linksys system has 6 internal aerials inside, but they are inside and they are lesser than all of those aerials you get on the Synology. And that seems massive and a bit space alien-y, but this gives you an enormous amount of coverage and control. And for those that watch my speed test videos of the mesh system, the Synology mesh system versus just typically the RT2600 on its own, you'll know that because of these aerials, I was able to create a much greater coverage area with this one device than any of these one on their own, which is very important indeed. And it's kind of one of the main reasons why I strongly recommend you get this device rather than 3 of those, and get 1 of these and 2 of those instead, because this on its own will give you so much blanket coverage in the middle of your area, you might get away with only the 1 mesh router required. You can cover more, space and frequency coverage with these 3 devices than you can with this. And I know it costs more money, so you would expect more. And technically, you could buy another 1 of these for the cost of that. So coverage is a hard way to compare. But what I will say is this device arrives with USB, it arrives with a WAN port, as they've all got, but they utilize LAN/WAN. But it also has 4 LAN ports, which is very important indeed, particularly for anyone out there that has more than 2 network devices in one location by your TV, by your main access point. So the result will be that if you have one of these, you've only got 2 LAN ports. You're going to have to wire this into a switch or utilize your ISP's router in order to connect those other devices at your main network point. And if you have a NAS, most NASs will utilize network connectivity. And you're going to rely on LAN a lot for gaming. Wi-Fi is still not quite there unless you're ridiculously close or using higher frequencies. So the fact that you've got those extra ports on your base unit with the Synology is exceedingly attractive to a number of you out there. And of course, it's got the WPS support, and that USB that inside is also fantastically useful, because the USB port, and again, there's more USB on the side as well. I better tighten that aerial, to be honest. I only chucked it on quickly for the video. The WPS port and the USB ports are things that make this one exceedingly attractive, and the fact that you can connect a USB drive to this with or without a NAS, connect a USB port to it, and it will make that drive network accessible, is something you just don't get with this Linksys system. And indeed, you don't get with a lot of mesh systems, because they're designed to be discreet and hidden, which I get and I understand, but you want at least one of them to have that connectivity at the main hub point of all of your network devices, your switch, your NAS, your whatever. Now, both of these systems have very similar things that support them, like a number of mesh systems. They both have self-healing, so if you saw my videos about my setup of mesh nodes with both of these systems, you'll know that if you disconnect one of these, remove the power, go to the other side of your house or building, plug it in, as long as they're within range of each other, they will repair their network and add the node back. You only have to set it up the first time, and that applies to both of these devices. They both got 2-click node connect, so when you set it up for the first time, once you've got your primary system set up, it really is 2 clicks to add any node system. If you want, there are obviously, you can do it a little bit more detailed and custom, but you can add any node, 2 clicks. They both have mobile applications that let you, cater and change things within these devices and control your network and the devices that are connected to it and priorities. But the Synology can be accessed via the mobile phone app, from a desktop system, from a number of different vantages, both internal and external to the network. The Linksys system can only really comfortably be configured with the mobile app, which I'm sure a number of you won't mind. But the mobile app, if you saw my video on the software overview, is incredibly limited by comparison. It's simple, but a little bit too simple, I think. And on top of that, the fact that you can't comfortably interact with it outside of the mobile app on a desktop platform or a laptop or something like that is incredibly depressing. And although you can access it outside of your network with the right security protocol, that mobile app feels very truncated and very limited indeed. Because they both support tri-band, they've got that mesh network system a priority, where the minute you move closer to one network connection, it will hop you over to the other. And they've all got an internal node that communicates with all the node and the primary device. They've all got that built into them. But what I will say is that the connectivity between the nodes and the communication between the nodes was a great deal quicker on the Synology system. And indeed the Synology system even has, I've got it on the screen, you can't see it quite slightly off camera, it has its own Wi-Fi performance tests built in that you can run periodically. It even has a light system built into the front where when you do place a node, it will let you know the strength of connection it has to the other node points. This isn't something this had. You kind of had to have blind faith or use that mobile app again, which was wasn't very detailed. So let's talk about pros and cons. First, let's talk about the pros. The pros of the Velop system, for example. First, straight away, very fast setup, very simple, fast setup. If you don't want to do any configuration, analytics, anything like that later on, and you want something you can set up, painfully simple, like your teenage kid can do it, this can do that. It's incredibly straightforward with a mobile app and very intuitive indeed. It also arrives with 3 years of manufacturer's warranty, which is pretty good, whereas the Synology system, both the main system and those meshes, have only got 2 years of warranty, which is a little disappointing given that enormous price difference between them. But that's about it really for pros if we're going to compare them, because there are pros to this system, but all of those pros can be applied to this. I'm just talking about unique advantages to going for one or the other. And a unique advantage, you're going for the Synology system, well, there's quite a few of them. One, I haven't even touched on it enough yet, but let's go there. Synology Router Manager, SRM 1.2. What a piece of software. It does everything. I mean, if you've ever used Synology's DSM software, and if you haven't, do check out a live demo and as compare. There's a link there to Synology's own website. The SRM system is completely configurable. You can add apps, add applications. You've got a huge amount of control. And I'm going to get onto the subject of control in a bit, but an enormous amount of configuration, all in a very user-friendly way. And if you have a Synology NAS, it will pair very well with that and how it connects with it. And the Network Center and the Wi-Fi Connect system, as well as the Safe Access, guest Wi-Fi controls, and adding further applications in the App Center. If I look here on the screen just off camera, where I'm still doing the closing stages of this test, we'll see that the Package Center still has quite a lot of apps on offer, something you don't get from the Linksys. On top of that, the fact that it has a better Wi-Fi signal of this on its own than any of those devices is something I touched on earlier on. Now, with the hardware advantages that has that I touched on, such as the multiple LAN ports on the base unit to the multiple USBs across all of them, those are things that you are definitely going to take advantage of if you've got a mesh point somewhere in your home that you want to use USB supported devices on, such as external storage. And the idea of using this as meant to be a hidden item is good, but these can be hidden and usable. So you have the best of both worlds there, something that I didn't think I'd ever say about Synology generally when it comes to their products. But let's talk about the disadvantages, because the disadvantages are where a number of you are really going to feel the pinch. Firstly, that mobile-only software access from the Linksys system is incredibly depressing. The fact that you've only got those 2 LAN ports is a little bit of a Larry letdown as well. And the fact that the coverage isn't as good as the Synology unit against unit. But the real killer, and I did mention this in the software video when I did the overview of it, is this Linksys Shield thing. Okay? Don't get me wrong, I don't have kids, but if I had kids, I would want to know that I've got security protocols in place, and if I've got an intelligent Wi-Fi system that can stop, material they shouldn't see, or restrict access to the internet when they're supposed to be doing the homework, or give them access to certain websites and others not during certain periods of the day, like Wikipedia or educational websites during learning hours, that's great. But this device charges you. You have a free 30-day trial, and then after that, after 30 days, you can sign up for this Shield program that over the year will cost you about 40 to 50 quid in the subscription per year. That's if you pay months against paying for the year up front. And it has automated things where you can scale up and scale down security profiles for devices, which again is good, but that is a lot of money for that. You know, I don't understand why it needs constant intervention there, because Synology includes that in the cost of their item. With Synology's SRM software, it has Google Safe Search, it has device and indeed user profile control. Indeed, if you go a little deeper, the Synology system included in its price, none of the subscription stuff, allows you to not only profile and create individual profiles for members of your family, and then as devices connect, say that belongs to Stacy, that belongs to David, that belongs to Beryl, what a name. Not only can you say all those devices belong to those certain people, but you can give them X amount of internet time per day. You could even reward them and give them more time that can be self-governed. On top of that, you've got Google Safe Search built into the device. So, or by their set of rules, I mean it implements Google Safe Search, something you don't have to pay extra for. So all of those rules and governing guidelines that this invites you to sign up to a trial for is included in the price of that, and you have to factor that in to that price difference. You know, as useful as that is, I don't think they should charge so much for that. I'd love to see how they define that number. On top of that, the device itself is, although, you know, very, very straightforward and very easy, the parental controls outside of the Synology Shield application are incredibly limited. There's a blacklist, whitelist selection, and you can set up, so you can stop or, you know, enable internet connectivity to certain devices, but that's about it. The rest of the features you would expect to actually have full control of, they've stuck behind that paywall of a monthly subscription, and I don't understand why they've done that, particularly because Synology have rolled that in to their SRM 1.2 software, which, although you're paying more for the hardware overall, over time you will end up paying less if you end up using those features of functionality. Now, it's not all good. Of course, the Synology has disadvantages. For a start, of course, it's more expensive. It has that shorter warranty, and the individual units of these, like for like against this, actually have a smaller coverage area because of the placement of the aerials. This has 6 internal antennae, this has 3, and one of those is a node that communicates with other devices. But you're not really going to see that difference if you're utilizing this here, the RT2600, because it works with them to garner and control and cover those other devices thanks to MIMO, something that's supported on all of them. And that is why I think the Synology Mesh system wins over all in this comparison, because it gives you more, it costs more, but you get better value for money. You get better security, you get better hardware, you get better software, and you get better access. This system relies on a number of extra things in your network that you're going to either have to pay for or already own, which is effectively the same thing. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you've got any questions, or if you're, you know, still wondering about these devices, please, please, please check out my overviews and software and speed tests that I did on these two devices in previous videos, and it will help you understand how I reached this conclusion. Do check out my next set of videos that are going to be on Google Wi-Fi Mesh and how that compares with both of these systems. But thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you next time. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Cheerio.